Wild Health is about optimizing you. We use genomics, blood work, biometrics, microbiome assessment, many other tests, and a conversation with you to come up with a full health optimization plan. What's the perfect diet, exercise, and supplement plan for you and only you? The Wild Health podcast is about optimizing all of us. Here we cover the cutting-edge science that gives you the base to be able to apply the personalized plan we give you as a patient. To sign up as a patient, go to wildhealth.com. Or if you're a physician or health coach and you want to learn how to do this for your patients, we're happy to help as well. wildhealth.com for all the information on becoming a patient or working with us.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wild Health Podcast. Mike Mallin here. I have with me today Steve Farrell. Steve is the author of A New Universal Dream, but Steve didn't start there. Steve actually started in Silicon Valley as a co-founder of two high-tech firms. And he pivoted and started or co-founded something called Humanities Team, which is a global nonprofit helping people everywhere awaken to our interconnectedness, which is somewhat of a pivot. It's the kind of pivot you expect from a startup company for sure, and definitely something that I would expect from an entrepreneur. But I'm really excited to talk to Steve today because whenever somebody says the word interconnectedness, I just start to get all excited inside. So Steve, welcome to the podcast. I can't wait to see where our conversation takes us today.
Yeah, me too, Mike. Thanks for having me.
So Steve, if you don't mind, I do definitely want to talk about your book, A New Universal Dream, because I know that just came out, but I'd love for our listeners to hear a little bit about your background and sort of the story of how you got to where you're at, because it's not a straight line, right? It seems like it had a few twists and turns along the way.
Yeah, no, it's not a straight line at all. So, the way I like to describe it is it's kind of a journey into conscious living, really my life. And just as when we, later sort of talk about what's happening out in the world, I think there's a great migration actually right now to conscious living, sort of like the Canadian geese, flying south, whales migrating south. I think that's actually going on everywhere. And, I just was right in the middle of it here. As maybe one of the earlier ones in the 90s when all this happened to me. So as you mentioned, I'd moved from the East Coast to the West Coast there right out of college. And boy, did I find myself in the right place at the right time because, myself and another guy, we started our first company there in January 1990, based in Silicon Valley. And used furniture, very little executive suite, just two of us, we didn't come from money at all. So we had 6 months to make it work or we had to go back and get another job. And then we were right there at the birth of the internet as we were starting this network integration company called ENS. And so, God, this thing, wow, we went to 175 people and 75 million in revenue over 10 years. And then inside of that, a time frame, we birthed a second company inside of ENS that we took to 75 million in 2 years. There at the end of the 90s. Now, while this was going on, I had my personal awakening experience. You mentioned, interconnectedness gets you excited as it does me. People that are listening to this program probably have heard many times this notion of a universal consciousness, animating all of life, and I do mean all of life, the whole universe, right? This is what a personal awakening experience is. And as I went through this experience there in the mid-90s, even while I was getting this incredible growth and I was in the Silicon Valley world and really in the center of wealth creation, so in those boys and girls clubs and the private jet world, what was exciting me even more than the entrepreneur experience was the personal awakening thing of, my God, it's like, this is what personal awakening is. Oh my God, I know who I am and why I'm here. And I'm looking out at a world that's just completely different, sacred, right? Where we're all, you could even call it sons and daughters of the Most High, as is the earth itself, right? And the universe itself. So over a period of time, even as I was getting that growth, I lost my passion for business. And I ended up there at the end of the 90s selling everything. These businesses, I left the business association I was in And by the way, in my chapter, was Gavin Newsom and other guys like that, and women that were extraordinary. The woman, Andy Cunningham, who was the marketing genius working with Steve Jobs as he was growing Apple. Those were my partners and colleagues there. So it was a extraordinary experience. But the thing about personal awakening is, it goes way beyond just sort of materiality. We actually see, that consciousness is eternal, right? We're a part of an eternal thing with unlimited potential, and we're here actually to do good. And so I could see, it felt to me like I was playing a kid's game, doing this entrepreneur thing, starting something, growing it, starting another thing and growing it. And so I sold everything. I left those associations. I moved my family to Boulder, Colorado. I launched this 501c3 nonprofit that you mentioned with Neil Donald Walsh, the author of the Conversations with God books. And here I am all these years later, really now finding the delicious life that I didn't find in Silicon Valley.
So you're a young man, you're in Silicon Valley, you're successful, you're 2 businesses deep, 75 million in revenue. How did this happen? What was this moment of personal awakening? I'd love to know more about it if you're comfortable sharing. Did this come out of nowhere? Was this sought? Were you looking for it? Was there an inner seeker, an inner searcher, a spiritual searcher? How did it all go down?
So I would say, from the time I was very young, I did feel a benevolent, not malevolent, God. Even though I was Catholic Church, I was an altar boy actually, and the priest wasn't the kindest guy in the world. But I could see, wow, churches maybe have lost their way, in terms of connection to at least what I was feeling, the God of my understanding. So I did feel that, but my mother and my sister chased me down to read Conversations with God, book 1 in the mid-90s. And they said, it's going to change your whole life, Steve. And I thought, well, I don't want to change my whole life. I'm living the Silicon Valley dream now. But I read the book, and indeed, it did change my whole life. It was like I say, the conclusion I came to during this time frame was, I'm playing a kid's game. Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah. I didn't grow up around private jets and these kinds of people that I mentioned. That was very unusual for me. I had a divorced, my mother was a divorced mom, 6 siblings, just a teeny little home. I grew up probably like most of your listeners here. But there's also, a soul's calling, I'll call it that inner voice, right? That still small voice, which I did listen to throughout my life. And there was a cognitive dissonance, at this time, where on the one hand, as I was doing all these private ski area jet things, I was thinking, God, this is really amazing, and then, but the cognitive dissonance of, and with everything that's going on in the world, is this really your thing, Steve? Is this where you're supposed to be? Is this where you want to spend your time, right? So that was that back and forth. And then during my personal awakening, I did surrender to this. It was like, okay, I understand, my parents were just the airport terminal, so to speak, delivering me to this world. As I mentioned, we had come from the Most High. That's really why I'm here, is a personal mission from that. My true mother, father, which we could call the divine or God or something. We could also call it universe or cosmos, as my science friends like to share. And once I made that decision of who I really am, the world around me started to shift, and all my decisions were shifting. This is where I sold everything, and it took me actually 2 years before Neil and I launched Humanities Team. That was in 2003. So that was kind of a challenging time. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew that there was something, a role that I was supposed to play, and I needed to allow certain doors to close for other doors to open. And we started it 20 years ago in 2003, and now we're Humanities Team, again, a 501c3 nonprofit. We're the largest global nonprofit in transformational education now.
Yeah, it's almost like a moment of either realization of what you truly are or a realization of what you're not, and either one gets you to the same place and makes it almost impossible to continue to play the game in some way, right? Like it's like previously, ignorance is bliss, right? And you can get up and go to work every day and not think about, the side effects of what you're doing or the impact on humanity or anything like that. Just go to the ski resort and have fun. But once you see that, once you realize that that's not who you are, or that you're something completely different, it's kind of hard to ignore anymore. You're kind of stuck on this new path. Was that your experience as well?
Exactly, and the universe has our back. It's actually trying to wake us up, because that, in my understanding, that's the purpose of life, is actually to awaken and to see this oneness, and that it's not just metaphor when I say you're a part of me and I'm a part of you, and that's true for the earth and others, and for that matter, the cosmos out there. In my understanding, that's actually why we embody, is to awaken, to see that, and then to live into that, embody that, express that in all the different ways that we can. And for some, it's a little thing, caring for an aging parent or a child or something. In others, it's to do things in community where you're really in service. And in others, it's a global thing, where we're just part of this whole awakening process. And that's where, again, I could compare this to Silicon Valley, where I knew all of these people of incredible financial wealth. And the thing that most people don't know, they've read a little bit here, is that there's an incredible stress actually in those lifestyles, and there's a lot of pressure on relationships, even with your partner and your kids and things. So when you climb to those upper rungs of the American dream ladder, I didn't really like what I could see. It was like, wow, this isn't the American dream that I want to live, And it was at that very same time that I was climbing this other ladder into this whole conscious living thing, and saying, wow, this is really, not only is it amazing, but any person from any place on the planet can actually live into this. We don't have to go to Silicon Valley, We just come into this whole, we're transformed. We see the world differently. We come into service. These are all things we naturally do as part of our personal awakening. And this is where then we start living what I'll call the delicious life, which is conscious living, where I get up and it's just, it's like floating on a raft, compared to earlier in my life when most of us growing up, we'd say, boy, there are some really bad days. This is a really tough day. And other days we'd say, this is a great day. It's just kind of roller coaster like that. In conscious living, my observation is more like you're on a raft, kind of floating above that. And there's still all of these challenges going on, but you're not sucked into them, and you don't go into this terrible place. You stay in a really good place as you're feeling into what's there and what is yours to do, and so on. So yes, I think, this is, and I call, as I mentioned earlier, I think there's a great migration right now to conscious living, because both in the macro, the collective, and in the micro, our individual lives, things aren't working real well, as we all know, in the world today. I think this is where it's smell the coffee time, and I believe it's smell the coffee so we can come into understandings like what you and I are talking about here now, Mike.
Yeah, well, suffering is such a powerful pointer for people to awaken. So I think we're definitely in a period of opportunity for humanity. And so what a great time for someone like yourself to start something like Humanities Team, which it sounds like to me, the goal is basically to awaken and help everyone live as conscious a life as possible throughout the entire world, which is pretty lofty goal, nothing to shake a stick at. Tell me a little bit about how Humanities Team is going about doing that, and how you're trying to achieve those goals.
So the particular download that came to us here about a year and a half ago was to make conscious living pervasive worldwide by 2040. So that's in 17 years, which might sound like, wow, that's impossible. How do you plan to do that? But here's the thing, a couple things. One is we were called, I mentioned you're called to, right? That's that inner voice, you're called to think. So we were called to get into education, start creating master classes around conscious living. And we're grateful that the scientists like Greg Braden and Bruce Lipton, Nassim Harriman, Lynn McTaggart, all of these came in and started working with us, the spiritual leaders, Neil Donald Walsh, Michael Beckwith, and many others, philosophers, Ken Wilber, and then embodied practices just all over the place, Qigong, yoga, all of these came in and started working with us. We created all these master classes, and then we were called to create a streaming platform. And my background in technology allowed me to kind of get into that world where we could start streaming and creating our own APIs and creating the customer experience we wanted and bring them back through our own customer relationship experience instead of leaving it to the technology company. And now we just started translating in 75 languages, our new master classes. So even talking to our country coordinator in South Africa, he says, wow, a lot of the content can go through these classes because we're getting to many of the languages there on the African continent. It's just an unfolding like that where we're bringing, and of course, we're a nonprofit, so we're bringing the prices down here. The platform's called Humanities Team Plus. And so that we can get these programs in homes all over the world, that 17-year goal. So where you can get the price down on your streaming platform, and you got all these scientists and spiritual leaders and embodied practices at any home on the planet, because of all the translation. Now we're talking about some real possibility in terms of people being exposed to conscious living from many different avenues so that we can really, this whole, what I'm trying to put words to here, raft and things, where people experience that themselves and even create conscious businesses and conscious classrooms and all of that. One other thing I'll just mention real quick. Probably a lot of your listeners are familiar with David Hawkins, who's not alive. He transitioned. He wrote Power versus Force, so a big seminal book, right? So Power versus Force says the power is that inner consciousness thing that we're talking about. Force is where we're just coming, we're trying to manipulate and we're in fear and all of these things. When we're coming from power like that, so where we're awakened, and if we can go all the way to enlightenment, as some do, the offsets that Hawkins talks about are just when we're awake, that we're offsetting about 1 million people on the planet that are in that darker, denser energy of not awake. And if we get up into those higher level, 700 to 1,000 on the Hawkins scale, which he calls enlightenment, now we're offsetting 70 million people out on the planet that are in this dark, dense energy. So you can see now how we can create tipping point where people are awakening, and setting higher vibration points and becoming healers and things where that 8 to 10% becomes real when we look at scales like what Hawkins created.
Yeah. Yeah. Whenever I think about that, I think about, at first when I hear that, the idea of offsetting like 70 million people, it seems like a lot. But then you think about like your day-to-day activities, and there are those people that you come into contact with every once in a while that just seem like they just seem so powerful, right? Like they just have such a drive for good, and your experience with them is just it's all positive, and you get this sensation of like connectedness with them. And those people really do invigorate us, right? And they like empower us to go forth and do more good and be more kind, to care for others. And that it's amazing how there is almost this exponential effect that some people can have when they connect with others, right? And then you give people like that all of a sudden like a streaming account, and now they can connect with presumably millions of people. That's a pretty strong proposition, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Think of if you've been in attendance like at a Dalai Lama program or Thich Nhat Hanh when he used to travel, just as a few examples. There are others. So these ones that are up at that level, boy, you can see how, you sit in the audience and you watch these people and it's transforming. You're like, wow, you just feel a different energy. Yeah, there's a vibration there that's astounding. And then, others that are awake, you and I, as we're talking, and probably many or most of your listeners, it's not maybe on that same level, but people will say, this is different. I like this energy. These thoughts make a lot of sense to me. You can see how there's this ripple effect out there that creates this change. And especially now, while I'll call it the planet is pregnant in the sense that people are like, there's got to be more right going on than what's here, the extreme weather getting worse and wars and things. The people, I think, their antennas are up. There's an openness. There's maybe there is a better way. And this way is, Einstein, way back in his lifetime, this was what he was focusing on at the end of his life, where he said the the most, the biggest illusion in the world is the illusion of separation, which is interesting that he'd say that. And then he talked about how to address it. He said that no problem can be solved at the level of consciousness that created it. So what that means is, like at COP28, in Dubai, it's no wonder that we can't just get out of it, because we're in this consciousness. We're not awake. This oneness is not a part of the conversation. It's more of, we got to stop fossil fuels, and we got to try and do more of this and less of this. And it just doesn't work, right? We just keep kicking the can. But when we elevate consciousness, go to where we are talking now, we can't, if we wanted to, go and join a media company that's creating false narratives, or a GMO organization that's putting this junk out. I mean, we just can't even think about doing that. We're in service. That's what it means to awaken. That's what transformation is. So that's the thing. Einstein was right on target. We have to elevate consciousness if we're going to create that path to a sustainable and flourishing planet. And, as I look around the planet at all these kids and future generations coming, I'm like, they deserve to have a beautiful planet. I grew up as a boomer, camping, doing all these incredible things outdoors. We need to create that for future generations, and this is how we're going to create it.
Awesome. Yeah, you shared the book that kind of did it for you. The one that did it for me was actually Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth, which is a very similar premise in the sense that there is this awakening happening, and there's this awakening is the new Earth. So it's a really interesting concept that it really seems to resonate with a lot of people, because there's this opportunity for change in front of us right now. So many things that appear to be going negatively, and so many people seem to be finding spirituality now, and which is very interesting, because there's also sort of this movement away from the church that's been happening. And I think that's left people spiritually unfulfilled. And now they're opening and looking for something, and they're not finding it on social media, and Instagram's not it, and Facebook's not it, and they're trying to socially connect with people through technology, and none of it's it, right? And then it just sort of, it ripens them, and it gets them ready to just like, boom, aha, there's something more here. There's more opportunity. So you mentioned Humanities Team and the master's classes. Is this something that anyone can go check out? Is there a place that we can send the listeners if they're interested in checking out more?
Absolutely. So our Humanities Team is with a Y. So one word, of course, humanitiesteam.org. And you could go there at the top of the website. It's got programs, top left. When you pull that panel down, you'll see free programs. Check all of those out, for gosh sakes. Then under masterclasses, Neil Donald Walsh and I just created a brand new masterclass called The Art and Science of Conscious Living. And we did something we've never done before, which is we let people name their own price all the way to zero, because we want 8 billion people on the planet going through this masterclass that we just created, where we pulled it all together, the things we're talking about and so much more, because you're going to come out the other side, and you're definitely going to find some tools, and it may even be life-changing for you, but where we really get into the fullness of what this is, how it works. We bring it into our day-to-day life and things. So I would check that out, The Art and Science of Conscious Living. Take a look at that masterclass program page. And then again, at the bottom, it says, if you don't have a nickel in budget, then go through for free. But go through the program, because it's going to, there's so much there. We spent 4 months actually just researching everything we wanted to put into it. And then we went through the recording process with it. There are many other incredible programs too. You can go to, Humanities Stream, plural, humanitiesstream.net, okay, is where you go to the streaming platform. And there you'll see all the science and philosophy, embodied practices, spirituality, all of these programs, and at a really economical price. So it's more than just one masterclass. It's all of these for 12 months. We also have live programs that are sometimes 3 and 4 a day with people. Urban Laszlo has a weekly program. Wayne Dyer's daughters have a program that's live, and many other programs that are live. They're amazing. So we do a program called the Global Oneness Summit in October, and that's a $250 upgrade. It's free as part of the stream. So go check that out. if you're looking for something in your home and in the workplace and just basically out in the world as an activist, that Stream platform is amazing. And it's there as a community, more than just a technology platform, to support people that are on this great migration to conscious living. Because most of us don't have neighbors. Many are married actually to somebody not conscious, and certainly lots of family members that aren't conscious. And you can feel a little bit like an island, sort of standing alone. And this community has got people that are like-minded, kindred spirits, so to speak. There are even viewing parties where people go through master classes together, over 100 at a time. So I would invite people to check all of that out.
That's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about your book, A New Universal Dream. Maybe we can start with just what's the basic premise, or if there is just one, maybe there's multiple, but what's the basic premise behind this book?
Yeah, the basic premise is this migration to conscious living that's happening right now. It's not being reported by the media, but as some people have shared, Barnett Bain, who made What Dreams May Come, big producer in Hollywood, shared over 5 years ago. He said, Steve, we're living in the age of consciousness. Remember, years ago, they called it the information age and things like that. He was profoundly correct. This is the age of consciousness right now. And again, the media isn't reporting it, though I think that'll change in the months and years ahead. So the book is about this great migration to conscious living, and the story is told as a true story through me from age 12 to today, where I'm, long hair, hitchhiking around the U.S. there back in high school with all of my lessons learned, and then coming up to Silicon Valley, starting these companies, all of what I'm discussing here, and then starting Humanities Team, growing it to what it is today. So it's an over 50-year true story. There are 3 key decisions that I get. Actually, there are many that I talk about in the book, but let me bring in 3 key decisions that I talk about extensively in the book. The first one is that we must follow that still small voice and not allow the worldly noise to distract us. So this is a very hard thing to do, as you'll see if you read my book. It's called, it's called A New Universal Dream. So the reason it's so hard to do, especially at certain moments, is like when I left IBM to start my first company, this was at the end of the 80s, and people thought I'd lost my mind. Entrepreneur is big now. It wasn't then. At the end of the 80s, it's like, what? Yep. No payroll, a little executive suite and stuff. People thought, you didn't come from money. You're going to fall off that doggone high wire and splat. And if you think I got flack then, at the end of the 90s, when I had my spiritual awakening and I left everything and sold everything, oh my God, I had family fly out. I'm like, what are you doing? You lost your mind. I said, well, look at the world, it's out of balance. They said, okay, I'm with you, but what can one person do, And I said, well, no, but there's a real calling here, So it's hard, it's hard to follow that still small voice. And I talk about that throughout my life. It's what has allowed me to grow into all of the things that I've become, from just a middle kid, with lots of brothers and sisters and a divorced mom. So that's one. 2, what that leads you into then is another decision. This is the decision where we decide who we are, Am I Linda and Joe's son primarily, this physical body? Is that who I am? Or do I have a body? And I came from the creator of the whole universe, the Most High, and I'm here, to do her/his work. Who am I? So, where we make that decision just through education and embodied practices and things, where we make that decision that that's who we are, and start living into it, that's where everything turns and goes in the direction that we're talking about here now, where we live, I believe, for the reason that we were born into the world. We weren't born to play stupid games and, just go on vacations and have great, it's nice to go on great vacations, and have a car and a nice house and stuff. But that's not why we're here. That's not what brings us real joy. So it's instead the things we're talking about now. So that's the second decision that we make, is this decision about who we are, and then living into it. And then the third decision is kind of a process decision that I talk about throughout the book, which was the process I followed. it has 4 steps. So the first step is awareness, and this is where in the 90s I was paying attention to, what am I really feeling, here in terms of what's going on with me? And as I look out in the world, what do I see? What's really going on? And awareness guiding me in many ways. I'll give one example. I had a time management system. Okay, I was the CEO of a company there, and it was growing fast and stuff. And I realized I was just being too transactional because of my time management system. That I just was going to people of, hey, I got 6 things. Have you done these 6 things? And it's like, this is not why I'm here. So I threw out my time management system. I'm not telling everybody they need to do this. This is just me. So, but I said, I can't do this transactional thing anymore. I am not here to do that. I may crash my company. I really believed I might. It was very scary, actually. I threw it away. And then I became the person that I'm, talking about here now, where I could really hear people and listen, and we could go into deeper conversations and things. Ironically, my business really took off then. We were already growing, but where I stopped being transactional and was relational, and even better than that, where we're really kind of compadre and stuff, more spiritual. That's where it really took off for me. So awareness. Then the next one is conscious education. So which we've been talking about here. Most of your listeners, I'm guessing, have some or a lot of conscious education. If there's a lot that's new in science right now. So quantum physics is affirming all of these mystical experience things right now. If people haven't followed that, go to our website, go through some of those free classes with the scientists where they're going, they sound like preachers. These scientists are like, you are inseparable from the universe. You ought to have good pasture. You ought to be walking like straight up because like the universe can't be without you. It's interesting, So conscious education. The third one is just embodying and expressing that conscious education. It's not enough to just logic center of the mind, understand it. You don't want to stop there. You'll still have sharp elbows. The juicy things we're talking about don't happen. But once you start living into it, you become softer, kinder, grateful, in service, all of these things. So embody and express is the third step. And then the fourth one is engage others, invite people to this. You want to because you realize, oh my God, I took my ladder. It was leaning against the wrong wall. I moved it. Now it's leaning against a wall where I'm really living the life I want to live. And we want to invite people to, hey, try these things out. You're going to probably find the same experience. So that's where we're engaging others as we are on this program today.
So what are you talk a bit in the book about some of the root causes of personal and collective challenges. Things like, personally, it could be anxiety, depression. Collectively, it could be, global warming. I know we mentioned war, inequality, things like that. How do we go about addressing those things on, I guess, both a personal and a broad scale? How do you think about that?
It as we become you remember the Martin Luther King quote, so that only light can heal darkness. Darkness can't do that, right? So that's kind of the simplicity of it. Is as long as we're walking around in this more, I'm a body, and I got one life to live, and I go to dust at the end of the life. It makes total sense to why would we not just keep minting money in Silicon Valley, right? I've got one life, I'm this body is going to be gone. And, do the Elon Musk. Why not? Right? So I'm not saying that I would necessarily want to choose that, but it kind of can make sense. On the other hand, all of the mystical wisdom that passed down now being affirmed by science, where we say, oh my God, there really is a universal consciousness, my God, animating all of life, and this is how it works: an eternal life, unlimited potential, daily practice, going intentional, even metaphysical, all these things. As we start understanding that and living into it, these things melt away that are these things that are no good to ourselves and our family and our planet. I went from the busy CEO running around, in my book, my now wife I was dating, it was her birthday, I went into a refrigerator and grabbed an old muffin and stuffed a candle into it for her 30th birthday. and said, happy birthday. And she was in tears.
Whoops.
This is what you do, where you're just walking around this, busy CEO. Boy, as you awaken, now, my home isn't transactional. I mean, I am a completely different person. So now my son, my wife, my daughter, even the dog, I mean, it's a loving household. It's what we become. And as we start feeling that energy and putting that into our home and into our community, into our work and stuff, watch the world change around you. It's this thing, the Hawkins thing. Just watch the world change around you. And all we have to get to is 8 to 10%, which I believe we are on track to getting to now.
You mean all of humanity, 8 to 10%?
Yeah, the planet.
In terms of the Hawkins.
Kids and future generations, bam, we don't, we arrest and then heal, this extreme weather thing, war, the polarity where we're always fighting each other and all these things. We can't do those things when we're awake.
I think a lot of people are probably hearing what you're saying. And my guess is that a lot of them have also experienced some of these feelings, right? Some of the sensations of sort of like oneness, connectedness, consciousness. But then they would argue, then comes suffering. And then that's the real challenge. How do they stay in this position of conscious living from a conscious place in the middle of suffering? What advice do you have for them in that? It's sort of this concept that suffering is inevitable, right? But the goal is to figure out how to be conscious through the suffering in some way, right?
Yes. So let me talk about a few things first, just so people aren't thinking, oh, well, easy for him, coming from Silicon Valley and stuff. My wife and I adopted our kids. So our oldest is a boy, now 21, and he has something called pyroluria, which creates a separation anxiety, which means where we both leave our home, even at 21, it's really challenging for him. And even if one of us leave, then the other one wants to be here and he's checking on you and you're not going anywhere, right? And things like this. So for decades, Stephanie and I have only rarely been able to travel together, go on vacation together. Mm-hmm. And throughout the day, actually it's her birthday today. So she's out walking around having fun and I'm here. So there are challenges, that's a big challenge that we've got in our own home. So my life isn't like without, huge challenges too, but I realize that I'm here, to do what I'm doing, loving him, loving my wife, the work that I do that's helping the world. So this is the suffering thing. Most of us have challenges like this or worse, in our lives. But where we come into this whole awakened experience, we understand it, when I was a kid, it was like, oh boy, the clouds are here, not so good, or this kind of suffering, like what I'm talking about, awful. Now I understand, this is our whole reason for this eternal journey that we're on is to further awaken and to become more elevated in our higher consciousness and to become more in service. And this is what creates the juicy life, the delicious life. So I don't look at it any longer as like poor me with my circumstance with my son. I wouldn't give my son up for anything, even with the incredible challenges that poses. Let me bring in a second thing as well. So, again, I'm in conscious education. So I work with all of the key leaders in the conscious world globally, including many mediums that are 2 to 3 years, to work with them because they're so good. Also in the near-death experience community that are amazing. You can't get to these people because their stories are so amazing. Now, they all share about a panoramic life review. People have probably heard the term, or at least life review. So, which is that when we transition, right, and go back to the non-physical realm, there's a life review. Life review is people are it's not what I was thinking, seeing, or feeling. It's like people around me throughout my life, what they were seeing, thinking, and feeling around me from the beginning of my life to the end of my life. And it's a painful process, the mediums share, for people on this side who are caught up in all the things that, don't feel good. The ladder's not on the right wall. And for people on the other side where they've gone through this panoramic life review and it's like, ouch, that wasn't entirely the life I wanted to live. And it's now they're in the non-physical realm, they'll embody again later. But So we're actually creating a program right now with one of the talented mediums that's all about doing a life review right now. So people can see, where they're at, is their ladder against the right wall? Are they experiencing this flow that I talk about? Are they in service in these kinds of things? Because remember the Stephen Covey thing, habit number 2, begin with the end in mind. Okay, if this is the end, okay, we're all going to go through a panoramic life review, and our bank account isn't there, the car, the house, the vacations, nothing. It's only what people were thinking and seeing and feeling around us throughout our life. Well, so what do we want that to be? And do we want to get to the other side and like, oh my God, I missed it. I was off thinking it was this. We're doing all of these kind of silly things. So what this is saying then, coming into this suffering thing, is this is what it's about. Okay. And when we go to the non-physical realm, I know we don't even use the word death in my home because there isn't any death as we understand it. We just drop the body. That it's all about really that pure love and pure light thing. And it's a revolving door where we come back into a life to experience that. So where we have suffering, as you call it, suffering is an experience to just wake us up further, make us to give even in a deeper way, to be more in service, and as we do that, we'll actually experience a delicious life, even where you have things going on, like what I've got going on in my home.
You mentioned the panoramic life review. How are they creating that for people? Is this some sort of like meditative state that they're getting in? Is there psychedelics involved? Like how are you getting people to experience that panoramic life review?
So we're actually working on that masterclass now. It's going to come out in the second half of next year. So Karen Noe is the medium on this one. There are 2 near-death experience that are people that are huge, maybe the biggest guy in near-death experience in the world. I kind of hesitate to give all these names out right now because they're working on their program, and sure. we don't have this one available yet. But the whole idea behind it is Karen had come to me and said, Steve, this is one of the really hard parts of my job is, as I mentioned, all of these people have transitioned already, and they're like, wow, that wasn't the life I wanted to live, not real happy about the outcome. And then so many that she's reading now where they're not yet conscious, more kind of doing the old American dream thing, where life isn't so great either. And she said, wouldn't it be great, if we could just, like, people could experience a life review now? And then she created a test thing with some of the people she's working with. And it went so well in terms of opening their eyes to how life really works that she said, I'd really like to do our next masterclass on that topic. So that's what we're working on. We don't have this worked out yet because this is about 7-8 months out. But we're going to create that experience so people can really open their eyes to what's going to be at the end of their physical life, and then decide if they want to make any adjustments now or not.
Yeah, that sounds super interesting. I mean, the whole concept of to die before you die, that's, sort of a classical spiritual teaching. Is that's in some ways the goal of spirituality and deepening your spiritual practice is to have all of those realizations that presumably come at the end of this physical life, but have them now so that you can live the rest of this life better and towards greater meaning and purpose. So that sounds really cool. That'll be an interesting one. Well, let's see. We're running a bit out of time, but I want to get at a couple of recommendations for our listeners. So I like to ask my my guests these sorts of questions, which are somewhat infuriating sometimes, but I think it's good to kind of put things in perspective. So I'm going to give you 3 things, but you get to list 3 things that each of us can do to live consciously for a better future for ourselves and for the world. Just 3.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So let me give you 3 things. So one, just awareness is kind of sit with what Mike, you and I are talking about, just to see, really everything starts with awareness of, there really is something here. Maybe there are a few tools that I ought to explore, or people listening to this whole conversation saying, yep, got it. Got all those tools. there's nothing that they necessarily want to go do where we've covered things that they're on top of throughout. Awareness is going to guide and drive everything, not just in the beginning where I'm out of balance and where Earth is out of balance. It's amazing how awareness, where you're really paying attention. For example, I can walk by people now. I ride my bike around a lake every morning. I can walk by them just where I see them for half a second, and I can almost tell you what's going on in their life. I mean, I can feel people just through this work that I've been doing in terms of what kind of life they're living and how fulfilling that is. So awareness, really try that out. 2 is daily practice. So it's so important. It anchors us throughout the day. When I talked about that raft where we're floating like a raft above that up and down roller coaster life, comes from a daily practice where I'm really connecting with the one that is, there's oneness, in this interconnected world means there is no separation at all. Okay. So then the God of my understanding lives right in my chest. And yeah, I can still, like in my Catholic days, pray to up in the clouds because she's up there too, but it's actually right here, in my chest. There is no separation, which the James Webb Telescope is now telling us 2 billion times 3 trillion stars, right? That power plant, which is the universe, which is God, is right here. So where you can go into your daily practice and commune with that, it's that big, it's that powerful. So where you are, as we know, part of daily practice is we're letting go of the whole, there's this challenge and I feel regret about this, or I'm worried about that. That we let off. In our daily practice, we're going into, it's highly intentional. We're into this world, for me, it's awake already. Wow, we're experiencing conscious living in its fullness. Businesses are transformed. Man, all of that's happening. And where I'm thanking God, actually, that this whole awakening is occurring. The kids are going to have a future on the planet and stuff. So daily practice, just go into this power plant, this where the God of your understanding is right there in your chest. Feel that and feel the power of that, even where it's for minutes, it doesn't even have to be for 10 minutes. What happens to me is it's so powerful that throughout my day, I'm like, I'm going to go back and sit down again and do that now, and it anchors, because it feels so good, and it anchors me throughout my day, and it's intentional and it's metaphysical. And so I'm actually co-creating doing it. And most importantly, it puts me in a place like the raft where I can have all kinds of terrible things going on, and I'm really in very good shape throughout my day because I'm anchored by that. So do that. 3 is go check out some of these things, these education things, because I'm almost sure I've been doing this for 20 years, working with all of these leaders. I've given you a few names here. It's an extraordinary thing to be able to be in the middle of all of that and to have my eyes opened to the wisdom that's been shared for 20 years by these people. Go scan the free programs on the Humanities Team website and just see if there isn't one in there where the spiritual, the science, that's embodied practice, that maybe has got a few tools for you. I'd be shocked if you didn't find a few of these free programs that we're going to really get your attention. That's Humanities Team with a Y.org. And then again, at the top, pull down programs to go to free programs.
Awesome. Steve, thanks for your time. Everyone, you can check out Steve's book, A New Universal Dream. I'm sure it's on Amazon and all over the place. And again, Humanities Team is the nonprofit that Steve co-founded, and it sounds like they've got some really cool master classes. So, Steve, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. This has been a great conversation, and I really hope it leads to a lot more for our listeners.
Yeah, well, thanks again for having me, Mike, and let me know if I can ever be of any assistance to you and your program. Godspeed to you.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you want more daily health education, be sure to follow us on Instagram, which is filled with health optimization how-tos, grocery shopping lists, guided breathwork posts, myth debunking, and so much more. You can find us at Wild Health MD on Instagram.